Hadith number 733. وعن عمرو بن شعيب عن أبيه عن جده أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم قال لا يجوز لمرأة عطية إلا بإذن زوجها. وفي لفظ لا يجوز للمرأة أمر في مالها إذا ملك زوجها عصمتها. The various narrations here in Hadith number 733 indicating upon the authority of Amr ibn Shu'aib and Abihi and Jaddihi that the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, it is not permissible for a female to give a gift without her husband's permission. And another version states it's not lawful for the female to dispose of anything with regards to her own property. The previous narration we could have easily said, well, obviously she's not allowed to give off her husband's property without his permission. This makes sense without any problem. But the version here states that she's not allowed to dispose of any of her property without her husband's permission. Jayid. These various narrations, we gauge number one, that the female should not spend off from their husband's wealth without his permission, makes sense. Number two, not allowed to spend off her wealth without the husband's permission, as per the narration reported by Imam Ahmed and Ashab as-Sunan. Whereas majority of the scholars state that the female is allowed to dispose of her own property without the permission of the husband. And that's the opinion of majority. Their proofs were that during the day of Eid, the Messenger ﷺ would go to the side of the females and he would encourage them to give sadaqah, etc. And they would take off the earrings, take off the jewelry and give this in sadaqah. So here the females disposing of her property without the permission of the husband. We also know that Maymuna radiallahu ta'ala anha, she set a slave free without the permission of the Messenger ﷺ. Thus what many a scholar has stated that this is with regards to husnul ishra. This is with regards to good communication and good relationship etiquette between husband and wife. That it's better, if she discusses the matter with him, especially if it's something major, she discusses with him, etc. But it's not an obligation, and that's the opinion of majority of the scholars. As for small matters, even if it be the possession of the husband, if the urf dictates that she distributes this and she gives it off without his problem and he knows and he doesn't have an issue, then there's no problem, insha'Allah. For example, maybe there might be some leftover food, maybe there be some old clothes, etc. in the home, and she gives it off to some of those who are poor without seeking the permission of the husband, but he knows that she does this and this is the custom and the norm in that home, the urf, then that would be permissible bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. Hadith number 734. وعن قبيصة ابن مخارق الهلالي رضي الله تعالى عنه قال قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم إن المسألة لا تحل إلا لأحد ثلاثة. رجل تحمل حمالة فحلت له المسألة حتى يصيب قواما ثم يمسك. ورجل أصابته جائحة اجتاحت ماله فحلت له المسألة حتى يصيب قواما من عيش. ورجل أصابته فاقة حتى يقول ثلاثة من ذوي الحجة من قومه لقد أصابت فلانا فاقة فحلت له المسألة. The topic of this hadith dealing with begging or coming to the people and requesting assistance, asking for help. The hadith number 734 states that begging is not allowed except for three individuals. Who are they? Number one, the person who has become a guarantor for a payment. Jayid, you stood guarantee with regards to this person in a matter. You took on the burden of another person. You tried to make peace between two parties, two tribes. You tried to make peace and this one said, no, I want this amount, and this one says, no, I do not owe you, etc. You came in the middle and you made peace between these two parties and you took on the debt on your head. You said, okay, the million that you are asking from the tribe of such and such, I will pay this up. You took on the debt, your intention is to make peace, so you are allowed, if you don't have this money, you're allowed to go forward and seek assistance in the payment of that debt. Begging is allowed until he gets it. after which he must stop begging. A person whose property has been destroyed by calamity, a natural calamity, disaster, etc., totally lost everything, he is allowed to seek assistance. And he is allowed to seek assistance until he gets what would support him. And a person who's been smitten by poverty, he was rich last year, and now suddenly business gone bad and he's lost everything in some bad deals. This person's also allowed to beg, he's allowed to seek assistance, and we help him out. But the third category, this person would require that certain individuals come forward and testify on his behalf. Certain individuals, 3 individuals who know him, come forward and they testify that this and this has happened to him. As for the natural disaster, everybody knows about it, so we do not require any witnesses. As for you standing guarantee between 2 tribes, well, the 2 tribes know, there's many people who know about the matter. But your business suddenly going through a bad patch and you're not having wealth, everyone knows you to be rich, now suddenly you claim to be poor. Here we would require 3 witnesses for that matter. Wallahu ta'ala a'lam. Then the author Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani rahimahullah, he moves on to the next chapter number 7 in the book of business transactions, and hadith number 735, dealing with the topic of sulh, dealing with the topic of reconciliation. Allah states in the noble Quran, وَالصُّلْحُ خَيْرٌ, and making reconciliation, it is good. Making islah between the people, it is good. The fawaid of sulh, the benefits of sulh, it joins between tribes, it joins between people, it joins between husband and wife. We also have sulh between the Muslims and the non-Muslims. For example, some sort of treaty between them. We have between the Muslim ruler and the rebels. Also we have treaties of sulh there between spouses, as we had discussed. The Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam states, "As-sulhu jaiz bayn al-muslimin." That sulh, it is permissible between the Muslims. Take note, it's not lazim, it's not an obligation, it's not binding upon you by the law, etc. That it is up to you if you want to accept these conditions. If it's up to you if you want to, and you feel that it's in your maslahah, in your benefit, to accept this type of reconciliation or this sulh, and no doubt it is better. As-sulhu jaiz bayn al-muslimin. The conditions in the sulh, in this treaty, it is not binding upon you, and it is up to you to accept. If you accept, then it's binding upon you. إِلَّا صُلْحًا حَرَّمَ حَلَالًا. That accept the type of reconciliation which makes the حَرَّمَ حَلَالًا, which makes the halal haram. Or أَحَلَّ حَرَامًا, or it makes permissible that which is haram. وَالْمُسْلِمُونَ عَلَى شُرُوطِهِمْ, and Muslims are bound by their conditions. They put these conditions, they accepted these conditions, they have to abide by those conditions. إِلَّا شَرْطًا حَرَّمَ حَلَالًا or أَحَلَّ حَرَامًا. Accept a condition which makes the halal haram or the haram halal. Jayyid. Very, very important hadith. Number 1, we gauge that sulh is something which is permissible. In fact, it is highly recommended. Number 2, take note, we have something called sulh iqrar and sulh inkar. Sulh iqrar, where you acknowledge that this is something which you are liable for, but you want to find and you want to reconciliate and you want to find an easy way out. For example, you owe Sulaiman $1 million. You do not have $1 million. You seek sulh with him. You seek some sort of middle path with him, reconciliation with him. That, look, brother, I do not have this. Can we maybe find a way out? Find a way that maybe I can pay you 750,000 and we call it quits. If you accept, alhamdulillah, that's good. If you don't, well, I will still owe you the 1 million, but I need some time. So it's upon them for them to agree. This is where you acknowledge your liability and you want some sulh. Another type of sulh is sulh inkar, where you deny. You say, I do not owe you anything. I only owe you, or maybe I only owe you 500,000. You are asking for 1 million. I don't owe you that. But just for the sake of peace, just because I do not want to be running to court all the time and lawyers' fees, etc., I will pay you 600,000 and we call it quits. I acknowledge I only owe you 500,000. You are asking for 750. I do not want to go to the lawyers and court, etc. Let's go with 600 I deny it, that extra 100, but we'll call it quits on 600 just for the peace. So this is sulh inkar. You deny, but because of peace, you would pay up. جيد. We also get from this hadith that conditions are allowed. وَالْمُسْلِمُونَ عَلَى شُرُوطِهِم. Very, very important hadith. And lastly, that haram conditions are impermissible. Hadith number 736, hadith number 737. وعن أبي هريرة رضي الله تعالى عنه أن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم قال لا يمنع جار جاره أن يغرز خشبة في جداره. ثم يقول أبو هريرة رضي الله تعالى عنه ما لي أراكم عنها معرضين والله لأرمين بين أكتافكم. وعن أبي حميد الساعدي رضي الله تعالى عنه قال قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم لا يحل لامرئ أن يأخذ عصا أخيه بغير طيب نفس منه. Hadith number 736 and 737. The first one, that the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam states, no one should prevent his neighbor from fixing a nail, from fixing a beam in his wall. So you have your house and you have the neighbor's house attached to your house, and the neighbor wants to put some sort of nail onto the wall, which is your wall, which is maybe a common wall, or maybe it's just your wall. He wants to put a nail there, maybe he wants to make a line for his clothing, whatever it might be. If there's no darar upon you, if there's no harm upon you, then this is something that you're not allowed to prevent him from doing that. As per the hadith, do not prevent the person from doing that. And Abu Hurairah, when the people heard about this, then he found that the people were reluctant. He says that in following the sunnah, he says that I swear by Allah that I will continue, I will narrate this to you people, and I will make you abide by it even if you don't like it. That this is the sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So, Ya Abdullah, Ya Amatallah, number one, we gauge from this hadith the rights of the neighbor. مَا زَالَ جِبْرِيلْ يُوصِنِي بِالْجَارِ حَتَّى ظَنَنْتُ أَنَّهُ سَيُوَرِّثُهُ. The Jibreel continued to advise me and talk about the neighbor until I thought the neighbor would even be an heir. Subhanallah, the neighbor might inherit. Hadith reported by Imam al-Bukhari. Number two, that you should allow that which does not cause any harm to you. Yes, if it harms you, then you have the right to prevent it. Jayid. And Abu Hurairah was the Amir of Medina al-Munawwara during this time, and this was during the rule of Marwan ibn al-Hakam during the Umayyad dynasty. Hadith number 737. The Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam states that it's not permissible for a person to take his brother's stick except with his goodwill, except with his permission. So Ibn Hajar brings this hadith and the previous hadith that there's no contradiction here. Generally, the property of another is the property of another. You do not have any right over it. But in hadith number 736, the Sharia has allowed, if there's no harm upon you, then I'm allowed to put a nail, I'm allowed to put a beam, etc. upon the wall. But otherwise, the Sharia respects personal ownership. And the hadith mentions, even if it be a stick, do not take the stick of your brother except with his permission. Even a small matter, even something small. Jayid, you only take what belongs to you, and you do not take the property of another. You don't take it and maybe hide it and cause him, disturbance and cause him to get worried. And after this, you laugh and you give it back to him. This is all not allowed. Ya Abdullah, Ya Amatallah. Look at the Sharia, subhanallah. What level of intricacy. Look at the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam comes with all of these statements. Why? To not allow any hasad, enmity, hatred, niza' to form between the hearts of the Muslims. Ya Abdullah, Ya Amatallah, verily in these words there's great wisdom. Would that be idhnillahi ta'ala, we take a short break, and when we return we take the chapter Bab al-Hawala wal-Daman. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.